Welcome to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this granny square and how to turn it into a beautiful squishy cushion cover. So the materials that we're going to need for our project today is any number of colours that you want. I've gone for 3 different colours in this cushion cover, and I've used my favourite PaintBox yarns, and this is in Simply Chunky, so any chunky weight or bulky weight yarn will do. I'm using paper white, which is 302. I think this is Misty grey, which is 303. And one of the pinks, has it got it on here? No, 349. So I'm going to be using the corresponding hook size for the chunky yarns. So I have my 6mm Furls crochet hook here. Some of the other things we're going to be needing, just to make our lives super easy, I've got 4 stitch markers, and of course a darning needle, because there are going to be quite a few ends with this one, but it's most definitely worth it. Gather all those materials, and whilst you're doing that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so that you never miss out on another crochet tutorial again. And let's make this cushion cover. So I'm going to be starting with my lightest colour, which is the paper white. And we're going to simply start by making a slip knot and popping that onto our hook. I'm just pulling on that working yarn to tighten that slip knot against my hook there. And we just yarn over the hook and bring it through the loop on our hook to make a chain. And we're going to make a chain of 4 to start. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to slip stitch into that first chain that we made by yarning over, bringing a loop through, straight through the loop on your hook, and that creates a little ring. There's a space above, and we're going to work directly into that middle there and holding our tail yarn against that ring so we can work that in and tighten the hole at the end. So now that we've slip stitched and created this lovely ring, we're going to start by chaining 3. This chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. So I'm going to be using US terms in this pattern. So this is the equivalent of a UK treble crochet or a US double crochet. We're then going to work 11 double crochets into the center of this ring. So to do that, we yarn over the hook, working not into that space there, but the one underneath, the bigger hole in the middle. We're going to insert our hook, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. We're then going to do that for a further 10 times to give us a stitch count of 12. So we yarn over, reinsert our hook into the center of that ring there, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So we've got the chain 3, which was our first double crochet, 2, 3. So we're going to work more. I can't remember, I'm not very good at maths. So that's number, this is number 3 of, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So our 4th double crochet. Oops. Our 5th. Get a little bit more yarn. Our 6th. 7. 8. 9. Number 10, and if you're running out of space, you can pull your stitches around the ring there, because that makes number 11. So before I finish this round, I'm going to do a quick count, remembering that this one here counts as our first one. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So to finish round 1, we're going to slip stitch into the top of this chain 3. you're normally told to go under both loops of the top of your stitch, but I tend to go through not that first loop, but the second and the back loop, because it makes the hole from slip stitching disappear. So we insert our hook into the third chain. So 1, 2, 3, insert our hook, yarn over, pull through to slip stitch, and that completes our round. I'm going to do a little chain 1 just to secure, because we're going to need a pair of scissors. Found them. So I'm just going to snip this off, making sure that I've got the right stitch count, and just pull that through to secure. Now with our tail at the back here, if you've worked around it, you can simply pull it and it will make that hole disappear. It's not completely secure. It's not as secure as a magic or adjustable ring, but it's more secure than those as well. So that is round 1. Very, very simple. We've got 12 double crochets, or the equivalent of 12 double crochets, worked into the middle of there. Now we're going to grab our second colour. Just going to make sure I match the colours on the last one. So the last one I did round 2 in pink. We're going to insert our hook into any of these stitches around. So for me, I'm actually going to go into the stitch after or before where I slip stitched. So I'm literally just going to insert my hook underneath the stitch, going to place the yarn over my hook and bring it through. I'm then going to grab my working yarn, the longer strand, yarn over and chain 1, and that just secures that in place. So we've done our chain 1. We're going to work another 2 chains, and once again this chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. So in round 2, what we're going to be doing is working 2 double crochets into each stitch around. So this counts as number 1. So we're going to place a second one into the same stitch that we've just worked. So just insert the hook under, and I'm going to work this tail in as I go. So I'm going to yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. So that counts as our first 2, just tightening up that strand there. Now the reason I've done this is because I wanted to show you what happens when you work over your slip stitch. We want to make sure that we're working the right number of stitches. So this counts as 1. See, it's right above this stitch here. Then we need to work where this chain is. So you need to you can go in there, but that's actually your slip stitch. So we need to go into this stitch here. So we're going to yarn over, insert the hook under. Oh no, that's the slip stitch. Hang on one second. We don't want to work into that. Want to work into there. There we go. It's always worth double checking where you're working. So we're just going to work our 2 double crochets into that next stitch. You just reinsert the hook into the same space or same stitch again. There we go. There's our slip stitch. We're going to ignore that. We're going to work into this next one here. Trying to work over my ends as I go. And again, we're just placing 2 double crochet stitches into each stitch around. So we're going to actually double our stitch count from 12 to 24 at the end of round 2. Oops. Okay. So continue to work around into each of your stitches, working 2 double crochets into each stitch around. And I'll meet you at the end of round 2. So I've just reached my last pair of double crochets. I'm just going to count to make sure that I have the right number. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22 and 4. So we want a total of 24 double crochets at the end of row 2, round 2. And again, we're just going to slip stitch to the top of the round here to join those together. And in this case, because we're going to start doing our clusters, I'm also going to slip stitch into the next stitch and then also into the space between these pairs. Little chain 1 to secure, and I'm just going to snip that colour off and just pull the hook through to tighten. So the next round we're going to work into the in between each pair of double crochets. So we're going to work, leave these pairs, see how they worked into the same stitch? We're going to work either side of them. So you can join your yarn in between any pair. So if you look for where you've got 2 and just go either side of that to join. Now, this is probably considered cheating or lazy or both, but I'm simply going to insert my hook from the back of my project to the front, loop over my yarn and pull the end through, because I'm going to tie on my colour changes. This is going to be a hard wearing thing. It's going to be on my sofa. I'm going to be pulling it around. I want to make sure that these never come undone. So not only am I going to tie these colour changes on, then going to weave the ends in securely at the end too. You can of course just do a slip knot, or you can change colours appropriately, but this works very well for me. So I've tied on my 3rd colour, and then next I'm going to do is insert my hook into the space where I've tied it on. And again, this is in between a pair. I'm going to yarn over to bring a loop up, and then I'm going to do my chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. So for this round, we're going to be doing the original, should I call it, granny stitch cluster. So it's going to be 3 treble crochets, but we're not doing a chain 1 in between because this is quite a gappy pattern anyway. So we yarn over the hook after our first chain 3, and we're going to work a further 2 double crochets into the same space between each of these pairs. So no chain 1 in between. We've got these 2 stitches going into that stitch, so we're going to work in between. So we yarn over, insert our hook, and work another 3 treble crochets. That's number 3. And then we've reached where we slip stitch, which is why I slip stitched in between the pair, because this will cover up this strand here. Making sure that I've gone the right side of the knot. There we are. 1, 2, and 3. There we go. And I'm just going to keep working in between each of these pairs here. That's number 3. Into the next pair. So for the remainder of this round, all the way back to this pair here, work 3 treble crochets in between each pair of stitches, and I'll catch up with you at the end of this round. So that's me worked in between my last pair. So for this time for counting, we should have 12 3 double crochet clusters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we should have 12 3 double crochet clusters around our circle now. And again, to finish this round, we're just going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3, and then slip stitch across those next 2 stitches in, and then into the space in between the 3 double crochet clusters. I'm going to do a little chain 1 just to secure and tie that off, and then we can snip. So there we have the start of our lovely granny circle. So I'm going to change back to colour 1 going into round 4, and I'm going to do the same way as I did before. You don't have to change the colours this way. You can leave them and bring them up if you wanted to. I just find this a little bit more secure, a little bit easier as well for myself. Very lazy, I know. I'm just tying that colour change on. Oops, there we go. So going into round 4, this is nice and easy to remember. We are going to do 4 double crochet clusters this time. So round 4, 4 clusters. So as always, we just insert our hook where we've tied that on, yarn over to bring a loop up, chain 3, which counts as a double crochet, and then we're going to work a further 3 double crochets into this same space. So yarn over hook, reinsert just as we did before, but instead of doing 3 double crochets, we're going to be placing 4 into each space around. So there's our first 4. I'm going to work over this space here, so remember to yarn over. I'm telling you or me there. And then into each of these cluster spaces, or the space between the clusters, we're going to work 4 double crochets. The next one, work 4 double crochet clusters. So although our stitch count is increasing, the number of clusters that we've made remains the same. So we're still going to have 12 double crochet clusters, but in this case they're going to have 4 double crochets in each of the clusters. Just make sure you do 4 in each of these clusters and continue to work all the way around round 4, placing 4 double crochet clusters into each cluster space around. And I will meet you back at the end of row 4, ready to do row 5. That's me just worked my last 4 double crochet cluster, and this time, as always, we're going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 to join the round, and slip stitch across the other 3 stitches as well. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then into that lovely space between our clusters. If you're fasting off like me, you may well do so, because going into round 5, we are going to work into each cluster space and in between the pair of, we're breaking the 4 in half effectively. So we're going to work into the cluster space here, and then we're going to work in between. So I'm going to start by working into the one behind, as always. Insert my hook. So 1, 2, 3. We need pink this time. There we go. Just going to tie that on because I'm lazy and I find it super, super secure. There we go. So I'm just tying on my other colour and going into round 5, we're going to place our double crochets in between each of the clusters, and we're going to break up these pairs here, or the blocks of 4, into 2s as well. So into each cluster space, we're going to work 2 double crochets. So we start with our chain 3, which counts as a double crochet, and then into that same cluster space we place another double crochet. Move that tail out of the way, and then in between, so where we've got these 4, we're going to work in between. So 1, 2, and insert your hook in there. So we're not working into the stitch as such, we're working in between the actual posts of the stitches. So this is the stitch at the top, these are the posts, and we're splitting these pairings up. So once you've worked in between those, we skip those 2, work into the next cluster space. Placing another 2 double crochets. Out the way. We're going to work in between this cluster here by placing another 2 double crochets, and we just repeat that the whole way around for round 5. So you work 2 double crochets into each cluster space and in between each group of 4. So in the middle of those 4, you work in between, placing a further 2 double crochets. So continue to work around for round 5, and I will see you at the end, ready for our next round. So that's the end of round 5. As always, we are going to join our round by slip stitching into the top of that 3rd chain, and I'm going to slip stitch across into a cluster space in between these 2 here and fasten off. So that's the end of round 5. It should be laying pretty flat at this point. A little bit curly, but it will need blocking, unfortunately, anyway. So that is round 5. We're going to go into round 6. And round 6 is where we get to do the grannies cluster again, the one we're really, my favourite. So we're going to need, in my case, I'm going for my grey for round 6. And as always, I'm just going to go back 1 space and attach my yarn the lazy way. Always the lazy way for me. So in round 6, very simply, we're going to work into each of these cluster spaces that we've made. Bring that yarn through, do our chain 3, and we're going to work a further 2 double crochets into this cluster space. And then we're going to work into each of these cluster spaces around, working one granny stitch. So 3 double crochet cluster into each cluster space around. Probably the nice, easiest round for us. So literally into each of these cluster spaces between these pairs, we're going to work 1 3 double crochet cluster. So I've reached the end of round 6. And as always, we are going to slip stitch to join and slip stitch all the way around to our cluster space. Our circle should measure 8 inches once we've finished round 6. So grab that tape measure and give it a quick check. We also need to complete 2 of these. So head back to the beginning of this video and complete a second circle, ready for day 2 tomorrow, where we'll be squaring off and completing our panels ready to join on day 3.